400 degrees. That is how hot the air in your lungs was about 10 seconds ago. Not warm. 400 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to blister skin on contact, at around 40 pounds per square inch of pressure. It was inside the compressor of a jet engine being crushed. Now it's about 70 degrees and it's touching the inside of your chest. Here's the part nobody expects. No one designed a separate system to keep you breathing at 38,000 feet. There is no oxygen supply feeding the cabin. There is no air tank. Engineers looked at the engine, saw it was already swallowing and squeezing enormous quantities of air, and tapped the pipe. Everything you're breathing is a byproduct, so we're going to follow one lungful of it, from the compressor blade to your face, and find the machine that takes 330 degrees out of it in about the length of this sentence. Take a breath right now. Feel where it's cool at the back of your throat. Notice it doesn't smell like anything. It's dry, and if you've flown for a few hours, you know that dryness in your eyes and your lips and the back of your nose. Every one of those sensations is a fingerprint of where that air has been. The dryness is deliberate. The lack of smell is engineered. The temperature is the output of a machine spinning somewhere under the cabin floor while you sit still. You are, at this moment, downstream of a jet engine. Now, the first thing almost everybody gets wrong. Ask 100 passengers where cabin air comes from, and a good number will say the exhaust. It sounds right. The engine is a tube, air goes in the front, hot gas comes out the back, and something in the middle must be feeding the cabin. It isn't the exhaust. It has never been the exhaust. A jet engine works in stages. Air enters the front and passes through the compressor, a series of bladed discs that squeeze it tighter and tighter. Then it reaches the combustion chamber, where fuel is added and lit. Then the burning gas blasts out through the turbine and out the back. Cabin air is taken from the compressor, before the fuel, before the fire. On a 737, it's tapped at two specific points, the 5th stage of the compressor and the 9th. The system switches between them automatically. At high thrust, it takes the cooler 5th stage air. At low thrust, when there isn't enough pressure there, it opens the 9th. Which leaves a genuine puzzle. If that air has never met fuel and nothing is burning, why is it 400 degrees? Squeeze a gas and it gets hot. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. You've felt this yourself. Pump up a bicycle tire quickly and the pump gets warm in your hand. There's no fire in a bicycle pump. The heat comes from the work you're doing on the air, forcing the same molecules into a smaller space, and that energy has to go somewhere. It goes into temperature. A jet compressor does that violently, dozens of times over, in a fraction of a second. So the heat isn't a design flaw and it isn't waste from combustion. It's the unavoidable receipt for pressure. And pressure is the entire point, because at cruise altitude, the outside air is far too thin to keep a human conscious. The engine is the only thing aboard producing high-pressure air in useful quantities. The engineers didn't want the heat, they wanted the squeeze. The heat came attached. Industry references put that air between 390 and 480 degrees as it leaves the engine pylon. Airbus describes it reaching the air conditioning packs at around 400 degrees after a first cooling stage. So now there's a problem with a number on it. 400 degrees, arriving continuously, and a cabin full of people who need it at 70. The first fix is the simple one. The air runs through a precooler, a heat exchanger, that dumps its heat into cooler air taken from the engine's own fan stream. The air that gets pushed around the outside of the engine core instead of through it. Downstream, the packs use another heat exchanger fed by outside ram air that's genuinely freezing at altitude. That gets you a long way. It does not get you to 70. And here's where it stops being plumbing and becomes something stranger. The aircraft does not have air conditioning, not in the sense you have at home. There is no refrigerant, no freon, no compressor loop, no coolant of any kind anywhere in that system. What it has is an air cycle machine. Picture a tiny jet engine running backwards. On one shaft, a turbine and a compressor. The hot, high-pressure air is forced through the turbine and expands. And as it expands, it has to do work. It spins that turbine. The energy to do that work comes out of the air itself, so the air loses temperature. Engineers call it the reverse Brayton cycle. Read that again because it's the elegant part. The thing being cooled is also the thing doing the cooling. The turbine it spins drives the compressor on the same shaft, so the machine needs no external power. You are being kept alive by air refrigerating itself, and it overshoots. Air coming out of that turbine drops below freezing, colder than the cabin needs, cold enough that water in it condenses out and gets stripped away by a water extractor, which is where the dryness in your throat comes from. Then it gets warmed back up. Some of the original hot bleed air, never cooled, is bled back in through what's called a trim valve and mixed until each zone of the cabin hits its target. So the temperature you're sitting in isn't a temperature that was achieved. It's two extremes blended in real time. The plane doesn't carry air conditioning. It carries a machine that makes cold out of pressure. That's the answer to the temperature. It is not the answer to everything. Because now we have to look at what else came through the pipe, and this is where the system's honest limits are. About half the air in the cabin at any moment is fresh from the engines. The other half is recirculated cabin air, pulled back through filters and mixed in. Those filters are HEPA filters, and they are excellent, hospital grade, capturing the overwhelming majority of particles, including the ones carrying bacteria and viruses. The whole cabin volume gets exchanged every few minutes. Now read the name. High efficiency particulate air. Particulate, it's a particle filter. It catches things that behave like tiny solids and droplets. It is not designed to capture gases, and gases pass through a HEPA filter the way wind passes through a fence. That matters because the engine bleed side has no gas filtration at all in a conventional aircraft. That air is cooled, dried, and pressure regulated. Nobody scrubs it. For the overwhelming majority of flights, this is a non-issue because the air taken from a healthy compressor is just air. But it is a real gap in the design, and the industry knows it because the newest aircraft have started closing it. Activated carbon filtration, which does capture gaseous compounds, has appeared on the latest generation of wide-bodies, which is a quiet admission. You don't add a filter for a problem that doesn't exist. And then one manufacturer went considerably further. When Boeing designed the 787, it did something no major manufacturer had done since the jet age began. It cut the bleed air out. The 787 pressurizes its cabin with electric compressors, drawing outside air directly and squeezing it with electrically driven machinery instead of tapping the engine. The power comes from generators on the engines and the auxiliary power unit. The engine still makes thrust. It no longer makes your air. The stated reasons were efficiency and control. Every kilogram of air bled from a compressor is air the engine paid to compress and then never got to burn, so bleeding it costs thrust and fuel. Taking it electrically is cleaner on the engine and gives finer control of cabin temperature and humidity. But notice what else it does. It removes the compressor from the breathing path entirely. Now, the honest audit, because I've been building a case and it deserves testing. The 787 is not actually bleedless. It still uses engine bleed air for anti-icing the engine cowls. So the convention wasn't abolished, it was narrowed. And the conventional system is not a scandal. Bleed air has pressurized commercial cabins for something like 70 years across billions of passenger journeys. And Airbus's own position is that this architecture remains the best proven technology available for the job on efficiency, reliability, and maintenance. That is not a company defending an indefensible design. On the numbers, they're right. So what actually survives all of this? Two things, and they're bounded. The air is thoroughly cooled and dried, and it is not gas filtered on the bleed side. That is a design fact, not an allegation. And the newest aircraft are moving away from the arrangement through carbon filters on some and electric compressors on others, without anyone declaring the old way unsafe. Nobody has closed that argument. It's being closed one aircraft program at a time. Which brings us back to the breath you took a minute ago. That air entered the engine as ordinary sky. It was crushed until it glowed with heat it never asked for, bled off through a valve, dumped into a heat exchanger, expanded through a turbine until it froze, wrung out, warmed back up, and delivered to a vent above your head. 10 seconds, maybe less. And here's the thing to sit with. There is no air supply on this aircraft. There is an engine and a machine that cools down what the engine was throwing away. You are not a passenger in a pressurized vessel. You're standing at the end of an exhaust pipe that somebody made survivable. Take another breath. It just came out of a fire-adjacent machine at 400 degrees, and it feels like nothing at all. That's the engineering. It's supposed to feel like nothing.